Okay. Well, being 2:02, I will call this July 16th Waco MPO Policy Board meeting to order. Just a few housekeeping items before we get into the official agenda. We've got the board members and some tech committee members on the Zoom call, and then there is a dial-in opportunity for members of the public and others. So for everyone, just keep yourself muted unless there is a time for you to share. We'll get into the agenda. Chris, has this meeting been posted?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you. And Kyle, I think you mentioned you needed to call Waco City Council to order.
Yes, we have a quorum, so I will call a meeting of the Waco City Council to order at 2:03 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I am going to do a roll call since we have a few that called in by audio only. If I see you, I'll just acknowledge that you're here, but if I call your name, please answer if you're here or not. So I am here. Is Keith Bond here? Okay. Josh Borderroot, I see you. Kyle Deaver, I see you. Bert Echterling, are you here? Kevin Evans, are you here? Judge Felton had a previous commitment. Bradley Ford, I see you. Travis Gibson, are you here? I see Jim Holmes. I heard Jim Jaska. Will Jones was not able to make it. I see John Kennard. I see Sean Ubry. I see Joseph Pace. I see Hector Savito. I see Stan Switek's name. And I see Bo Thomas. So, or at least Bo Thomas's name. So thank you all for joining. And for those of you keeping score at home, I have this record and can share it with y'all later if you didn't pick up on all of that. We will have a couple of public hearing opportunities. One of them is for those who have turned in cards in advance for anything that's on the agenda. So Chris will read that card at that time if there are any, as I call it out. And then the other opportunity is during one of our action items, which will be the 2020-2021 Unified Planning Work Program. So at that time, if you have turned in a card or not, we will allow the opportunity to speak. So with that being said, I'll move to item 2, reading of public comments regarding any item on the agenda. Chris, did we have any comments submitted ahead of time?
No, we did not.
Okay, moving on to item 3. We will consider and approve the minutes of the June 18th, 2020 MPO Policy Board meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes from the board members? Hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as presented. Item 4, consideration and action regarding approval of Resolution 2020-7, adoption of Amendment 1 to the FY 2020-2021 Unified Planning Work Program. We will go into a staff presentation, have a public hearing, and then the board will take action on this. And I'll give instructions for that in a minute. And by the way, for those of you, if you are following along by phone, the presentation was posted on the MPO's website, and there are slide numbers in the bottom right corner that Chris or I will be referring to from time to time. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and he's going to be starting on slide 8.
All right, thank you. So we're going to immediately go to slide 9 here. Just a reminder of what the Unified Planning Work Program is. This is effectively our operating budget for the next 2 fiscal years. The current document covers fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. This document is supposed to document how we are intending to use federal highway and transit planning funds over that 2-year period, and the tasks that the MPO staff will be working on during that time frame, regardless of funding source. On slide 10, what we're proposing to amend is first subtask 1.5, travel and training. At least through the end of this current fiscal year, there's really no place to travel to. Everything has either been canceled or moved to a virtual format. This is also true all the way through the end of the calendar year. And we're now starting to get some indication that this may extend even beyond that point. So we don't need nearly as much programmed in that particular subtask as we were originally thinking. So we'll be reducing that to a total of $4,000 for fiscal year 20 and a total of $5,000 for fiscal year 21. The next amendment would be to subtask 5.1. This is a transit route realignment study that is intended to follow up with the bus rapid transit design study. However, this study is heavily dependent on the recommendations coming out of the bus rapid transit design and engineering study. And unfortunately, that study is just now getting going. So it's going to be well into fiscal year 21 before we're really able to start the route realignment study. So right now there's a little less than 94,000 total dollars assigned to this study for fiscal year 20. So the amendment would basically just move that money into fiscal year 21, which is when this will likely get started. On slide 11, we did conduct a public process for these amendments. We conducted a 15-day comment period. We conducted 4 public informational meetings on this topic. We have not received any formal comments on this proposed amendment. And the MPO Technical Committee last week recommended adoption of the amendment. And Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to entertain any questions board members may have.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board? Chris, are there any, I mean, I know you probably would have included them, but any things that we would be concerned about or we should be asking that we're not?
At this point, I think there's still a lot of unknowns, and I think we're just basically trying to be as flexible as we can. But there may be further amendments down the road depending on what happens with COVID.
Understood. Okay, last call for questions at this point from the board. Okay, we'll go into a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing at 2:09 p.m. Chris, do we have any registration cards from the public on this item?
We do not.
Okay, we will also give an opportunity to anyone from the public listening on the phone. If you wanted to speak on this matter, now would be the time to unmute yourself and say so. Hearing none, I will close the public meeting at 2:10 p.m. We will move to consideration and action. So I need a motion on this item.
This is Holmes. Go ahead.
We got a first by Holmes.
Yeah, we'll give Holmes the first and the second. I'll second it. This is Hector.
Second was Hector Savito.
Yes.
Whoever, it's fine.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, unfortunately, we're getting on top of each other a little bit, so I am going to need to do a person-by-person call. So be sure to unmute yourself, and I'll go down the list. Jacob Bell, for it. Josh Borderud.
In favor.
Kyle Deaver.
Yes.
Bradley Ford. Bradley Ford. May have had to step away. Jim Holmes.
Aye.
Jim Jaska.
Yes.
John Kennard.
Yes.
Sean Ubry.
Yes.
Joseph Pace.
Yes.
Hector Sabito.
Yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Yes.
That's cool. Stan Switek
Yes.
and Bo Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, unanimously passes. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to action or to item 5 on the agenda: review and discussion regarding the final consultant report for the Laredo to Fort Worth high-speed transportation study and possible next steps. Chris, back to you.
All right. You may remember that this is a study that was presented to you, or some draft recommendations presented to you by a consulting team back in November. This study has been finalized by the consultants, has been submitted to the TxDOT Rail Division, and we wanted to circle back with you because some things have changed from when it was last presented to you back in November. And there were a couple of concerns that staff noted and forwarded to the consulting team. And we think are things that will probably need to be addressed at a future study moving forward with this particular service option. We also want to at least start the conversation with the board about things that we think are policy or technical considerations that we need to probably identify what direction we feel comfortable with. So we'll walk through all of that as we move forward. So just as a reminder, this study was intended to begin where the Texas-Oklahoma passenger rail study left off. If you remember, that study looked at several different service options along a corridor roughly paralleling I-35 from Oklahoma City all the way down to Laredo and really into northern Mexico. This study focused on just a handful of things. One was technology, and it added Hyperloop as one of the options for consideration, since that is new since the TOPRS study was completed. We also wanted to look at conceptual alignments and perhaps refine that a little bit from what the TOPRS study looked at. And then look at a very high level potential station locations within each of our MPO areas. So on slide 16, one of the most important things that came out of this study was a determination that all 6 MPO areas are viable station locations for any potential high-speed transportation option. For us, that's particularly comforting because, as you can see from this slide, we are the smallest of the 6 MPO areas along the corridor. When we get to slide 17, the consulting team really focused on 3 primary technologies for this corridor. There was Hyperloop, which I've just mentioned. There's maglev, and then there's high-speed rail. And I'll go over a little bit about what each of those entail and what some of the advantages and potential disadvantages are for each of those technologies. When we talk about high-speed rail, we're talking about something that's a traditional steel wheel on steel rail train, but it's really trying to maximize the speed benefits of that technology. There are some significant limitations. 200 miles an hour is probably about the maximum. A typical operating speed is probably similar or closer to 150 miles an hour. The big advantage is it's proven technology. It's in operation in countries all throughout the world, and we know very well what those engineering and operational and construction costs, for that matter, are. When we get to maglev, we're a little bit more futuristic here. Maglev is short for magnetic levitation, usually over a center beam. And the way maglev works is that you have magnets in both the train and the track itself. And the magnets within the track are turned on and off to propel the train down the track. The big advantage here is that the train essentially floats on magnetic current, and that eliminates any drag or resistance from steel wheels. So you can go much faster than traditional high-speed rail, usually about 350 miles an hour topping out at that speed. Typical operating speeds, 250 miles an hour. The challenge here is that right now there's just one operational line. That's in China. That's the line that takes you from Shanghai's airport to the downtown area. About 20 miles gets you there in about 8 to 9 minutes. That's a pretty short line, although there are much longer maglev trains in development right now. So as time goes on, we'll have a better idea of what those operational and construction costs might be. Then we get to Hyperloop, which is, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of good details about exactly what this is and how it would operate. The best description I've seen is that something similar to a maglev train operating within a vacuum sealed tube. It's not as simple as that, but that's probably the best description that I've seen. The advantage here is not only have you eliminated the drag and resistance from steel wheels on steel rails, you've also eliminated drag from air resistance. And that's what allows you to go at speeds approaching that of an airliner, 500, maybe 550 miles an hour. What we don't know is what is a typical operational speed, and we also have no concept about how much it would cost to design, operate, or construct this type of service. Right now, all we have is one facility. It's about a half-mile test track out in the Nevada desert, although there is another one under development, I believe, in Dubai. Now, the consultants did look at 3 other infill options, just a very cursory review. These are probably more appropriate as a second phase to basically provide service to the areas in between the main stations. So this would be something like service to Hillsborough or West or Lorena, perhaps. But that's probably still maybe another decade or so beyond development of the primary corridor. So on slide 20, the main takeaway here at this particular analysis is that not only is service to Waco viable, but that all service options are also viable to all stations or all MPO areas. So that's another important recommendation out of this study. So the next part was potential alignments, and this is still a very high-level conceptual overview, basically just trying to identify whether it was appropriate for to follow existing corridors, whether there'd be highways or railroads or utilities, or whether a greenfield alignment was going to be necessary. In general, when this was presented to you back in November, the feeling was that greenfield alignments or utility alignments were probably what we're going to have to follow for the most part for each of the different service options. That has changed, and the consulting team has made a change for the alignment between Temple and Fort Worth from, I believe it's mostly a utility alignment to following Interstate 35. And we have some concerns about that, and we're going to cover what our concerns about that change are in just a second here. And we suspect that the change was probably made in order to reduce potential right-of-way costs, but also potentially to reduce the political capital that would be necessary in a greenfield alignment type scenario. And so no surprise here, because of the potential difference in travel speeds, the Hyperloop options came out as the highest scoring options within the study, and that the other 2 options, maglev and high-speed rail, scored significantly less because of that. Now, the third part of this was to look at potential station locations. Now, it's not going to identify a dot on the map, but basically looking at census tract areas, which some of these can be fairly sizable areas. What the consultants were looking at were connectivity to other modes of transportation, what kind of activity centers you might have within that particular area, where there are any significant environmental constraints, and also was the land use within those areas compatible with a high-speed operation. But notably, and I've highlighted this in red, what was not used were things like geometric design or potential alignments or grades. In other words, could you realistically get a high-speed line into these geographic areas? And when we go to the next slide, slide 25, the center map is the Waco area. And you'll see that some of the high-scoring areas are actually out towards West Waco or the Hewitt-Woodway area, which I think would be extremely challenging to get a service line that's operating at 150 or 250 miles an hour into those particular areas. But one of the other areas is the Belmead to Lacey Lakeview area, and kind of specifically the Potts interchange area, which we've already kind of identified through another corridor study of ours, the Business 77 corridor study, that this was a real opportunity for redevelopment in that area. The Bus Rapid Transit study has identified that as a potential station location for that service. And so this may be a real opportunity for us to have a true intermodal connection and have plenty of right-of-way space to be able to work with in that particular area. Of course, we're going to have a lot more study about whether that's actually feasible or not, and can you get a high-speed line into that area without, say, wiping out half of Waco, which obviously we want to avoid. So on slide 26, there are several other factors that the consultants did take a look at. I'm not going to go into each of these here, but basically I wanted to show this to you to say that it wasn't just a very simplistic assessment. There were some other more detailed analysis that went into this. And so slide 27, the findings that they came up with is basically, or the consultants came up with, is 6 stops, 1 in each MPO area, and then Hyperloop is their recommended service option. And then as far as alignments are concerned, you see here that back in November, Fort Worth to Waco following utility corridor, that's now changed to Interstate 35. So let's talk about some of our comments that we submitted to the consulting team. This is slide 28. So our first concern is that I-35 alignment. And the suggestion was that Hyperloop could still follow that alignment and still travel at fairly robust speeds, whereas the other technologies would not be able to do that, most specifically maglev. So since our understanding is that Hyperloop is essentially a maglev train in a tube, we're kind of questioning whether that's really a valid assumption there. Of course, we don't have a lot of details about Hyperloop design, about its limitations. So if it turns out that no, an I-35 alignment probably would require significantly reduced speeds, then our concern is that we're missing the potential benefits of that technology, which is the faster travel speeds. Or we're now having to look at a greenfield alignment, which of course would have a very significant right-of-way cost, significant political capital cost, to the point where it could perhaps change that technology recommendation. And so we think we probably missed an opportunity here with this study, and that the Tier 2 study is going to need to look at this in a lot more detail than perhaps we were originally hoping for. Now, the Hyperloop staff did provide a suggestion that their technology can use tighter curve radiuses than maglev, and that I-35, in their opinion, is at least a viable option. But from our perspective, I-35 was designed for travel speeds for automobiles and trucks of 80 to 85 miles an hour. Hyperloop is trying to achieve speeds of 500 miles an hour, and that's a pretty significant difference there. The next concern we have was regarding their station analysis, and we've already mentioned that their focus was on the land use question and whether things were compatible with a high-speed train station within particular census tracts. But as I mentioned, some of what they identified as high scoring areas would be very challenging to bring a high-speed system in. And so we think that this is another area where a lot of more study is probably going to be necessary when we start looking at the Tier 2 study, which would be the next step. So there's some policy and technical considerations we think we need to start having a conversation with the board on. So the first is that, in our opinion, any technology above 150 miles an hour provides significant benefit to our region. It's a service option that we don't currently have, and what we need to decide is what are we most comfortable with? Are we more comfortable with a proven technology where we have known costs, which would be the high-speed rail? Are we willing to accept a little bit more risk with some of the more cutting-edge technologies like maglev and Hyperloop? And the risk there is that the costs may be significantly greater than perhaps what we were originally thinking, and the alignments may have to be a lot straighter, and thus have a much higher taking component and require a much greater amount of political capital than perhaps what we were thinking of initially. We think Hyperloop does appear to be viable. There is a test track under development in Dubai, and the United Arab Emirates are putting in a considerable amount of their own resources to develop this. And we think if it weren't viable, they probably wouldn't be looking at that kind of investment. And the other advantage here with Hyperloop is that if ours is developed and is successful, we're going to have other Hyperloop systems likely tying into this from other parts of the country. And so this truly becomes a connection for Waco to the rest of the U.S. and North America, for that matter, if we're able to make this successful. In terms of station location, I've already mentioned to you that we think that there's certainly a great potential of redeveloping the Potts interchange area as this potential station, which could then connect to a number of other service options and is pretty close to the center core of our urbanized area. So what's next? I mentioned that the study has been submitted by the Dallas-Fort Worth MPO, which is the North Central Texas Council of Governments. They have submitted this to the TxDOT Rail Division. The question now is, what is TxDOT's interest in continuing this study, and do they have the resources to conduct a Tier 2 environmental study? My feeling is that they're probably waiting to see what happens with the Dallas to Houston high-speed rail line, which is making progress, but it's incremental progress, and probably is still another 4 to 6 years away from operation. There may be private sector interest in a Hyperloop operation along I-35. The Hyperloop folks several years ago issued a report where the I-35 corridor was one of the top 20 corridors they were interested in. And it was for a number of reasons. Market analysis should be fairly easy to construct. There weren't a lot of environmental constraints. So this may be something where we just need to get the ball across a certain goal line, and then perhaps the private sector might be able to take this up from there. And then, of course, we don't know how COVID has changed interest in this particular system. We know that right now, there's not a lot of interest by the public to get onto planes, trains, buses. My guess is that once we get a handle on this disease and are able to protect ourselves against it, that probably shortly thereafter, folks' memories will be short and we'll go back to some of these other transportation options. Maybe wishful thinking on my part. I'm hoping it isn't, but that is something that we're going to have to track. So that's throwing a lot at you here. Certainly entertain any questions you might have or any thoughts that you might have.
Well, first, I think you missed the opportunity to make a planes, trains, and automobiles joke, but it's you know, it's okay. We still get comfortable in our cars, so that's something. I mean, this is nice, but I'm just wondering, A, how actionable it really is, considering the primary recommendation is something that is, as of yet, a non-existent technology, and that most of the scoring was based on conjecture in terms of expenses and whatnot. Coupled with kind of what you had said there on the next to last slide about TxDOT willingness to consider this at this point. And just, I mean, it's, and I don't like, I'm glad that the 6-stop option was the one that was preferred, but if that's the one that actually is preferred, I don't know why we still have to have the other option on there that bypasses us. It might be nice if that's the identified route to go ahead and take that off, so that's no longer an option, and they don't think about that. But beyond that, I mean, I know this. I mean, this isn't something that's even near or kind of near term. I mean, we're looking, you know, what, 20 years out on this, if it's anything.
The most aggressive timeline would probably be 10 years.
Okay. So I mean, those are really my things. I mean, this looks good. I mean, it's great. If Hyperloop happens, if the funding's there, if TxDOT's interested, if you know, and the 6-stop one is the one that remains preferred, and we've got a good spot for it, and we can figure it out. I mean, I agree with you that any of these options would be better than would be great to have, and in whatever role I have or will have, I'd be supportive of it. But I just, again, it's nice. I'm like, okay, this is great, but I'm just kind of curious what we actually do with it from here.
This is Holmes. I'll follow John's comments a little bit. I was surprised also that Hyperloop scored so high, you know, in really an untested technology. When I've been on the maglev trains over in China, and they are fast. I mean, they go 300 miles an hour. It feels like you're just sitting still. And the technology is there. It was weird to see Hyperloop score so high when we don't even really know how it works. So yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful. This all looks good. Is there anything we need to be thinking about as we kind of maybe triangulate on this POTS interchange? I guess just keep in the back of our minds as we have other projects around there that may be at least a data point for all of us to remember that would be kind of one of the optimal, not final by any means, but one of the optimal places for it as we think about other projects in the area. But otherwise, yeah, great presentation, Chris.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, this is Kyle. Go ahead, Hector.
Sorry, man, you go for it.
Well, my only question, I don't think I heard you say this, but the Hyperloop technology is primarily underground, correct?
It doesn't have to be. It can be above ground too.
But doesn't the fact that it can be underground make the taking question not nearly as difficult?
It could be. I think that's one of the great unknowns is we don't know how that affects the whole takings question. We also don't know how that affects the regulatory environment also. The federal government is trying to figure out what is this thing and what is the right federal administration to review this.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Chris, it's Hector. Thank you again for your presentation, and it was very informative. But I do have a few questions, so correct me if I'm wrong. I believe in the November presentation, either you or the gentleman that came and presented, there is nothing like this on the western side of the hemisphere right now, correct?
There's certainly nothing true high speed in the United States. That's correct.
Okay. And so this one would be the first in the U.S. if everything goes through as planned?
Well, the Houston to Dallas line is likely going to be the very first one. They're
Okay.
much further along in the development process.
Okay. And so the other part of my question is kind of piggyback what Councilmember Kennard said. You know, I'm glad that the 6-stop plan was the one that was preferred over the 4-stop plan. But what are the chances of them
going back to a 4-stop plan and eliminating Waco and Temple Killeen altogether as part of the stop plan?
The study basically said that while all 6 stops are viable and that certain service options absolutely make sense to stop at all 6 stations, there are service options that might be an express service. So for instance, it might go Fort Worth direct to San Antonio and not stop anywhere in between. Or you may have another service option that may make a stop in Austin. One of the things that they acknowledged is that there probably needs to be some flexibility in those different service plans, but that bypassing Waco or the Killeen Temple area, they did not recommend.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm glad to hear to say that, because I worried about the same thing when I saw both options on your presentation, and so I didn't know if there was still a likelihood or a possibility of them going back to just 4 city stops. So I'm glad to say that. But as previously, you know, I mean, I think we would support this. I just don't know the likelihood of it happening in the next 10 to 15 years, you know, or is it something that we're getting ahead on? And I know the conversations have to go on prior to that, but I didn't know if there was any chance of doing it sooner, but it sounds like the soonest would be 10 years.
That's correct. And, but you do have to start somewhere.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for that.
Just one more quick question. So whose job will it be to like move this forward? I mean, you know, there was like 6 areas. Who's kind of taking the lead on this?
TxDOT would really have to take the lead.
Okay. So, but, and at this point, their interest is undetermined as
That's
to doing
correct.
that? Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Chris? So other MPOs are reviewing this as well and providing their feedback. I would imagine all 6 of the MPOs shown definitely have the opportunity and probably are providing some feedback. Chris, do you know, is the feedback being taken in consideration in the conclusion of the study, or, I mean, what happens with our feedback?
That's a good question. We've submitted this to the consultants for inclusion in the report. I think it's up to TxDOT what they want to do with those comments. I know I've spoken with my counterpart for Austin, Campo, and they're actually much more concerned about the recommendations than we are, in fact, to the point where they may actually suggest that they're not going to support the recommendations of the study for a number of reasons that are unique to their area. Part of it is that they're trying to put I-35 underground through downtown Austin, and they're not particularly interested in them putting something else on top of it within their area.
Okay, well, Chris, thanks for championing our area, and please stay in touch with the powers that be on this item as well as us, and if there needs to be any conversation from any other members of the community or board members with anybody, either on this study or at TxDOT or federal level, please let us know. And so, but we're excited to see where it goes. It certainly would be something really good for the not only the Waco area, but the whole state, sounds like. Okay, we are going to move on to discussion item number 6. Discussion and updates from Texas Department of Transportation regarding significant highway construction within the Waco metro area. Clayton, I believe you're on the call, and you can take it from here.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll start with 84. The contractor's working in the intersection, starting signal work today, actually. I hope to have permanent signals up and activated by the end of the week. I should just have a little bit of intersection frontage frontage road work to wrap up. We hope to be done late this month, or worst case by end of August, and out of that Spiegelville project. 939, again, we're in the closeout stages, installing permanent signs, punch lists. Hope to have it wrapped up by the end of August as well. 938 at Tonk Creek, bridge is constructed. We are building the new roadway approaches on either end. Again, this is another one we hope to have wrapped up into this month, August timeframe. 1637 phase 2, again, another one in punch list phase. So we hope to be out of there by end of July or August timeframe as well. 1637 phase 3 is really starting to progress. Contractor actually is going to be starting paving on the north end of the project next week. We'll continue working in towards China Spring, and we hope to be done in the fall. So 35, we've completed just over $150 million worth of work through June. We're still projecting an on-time finish. Today, I'm actually going to do something a little different. So Chris, I'm gonna take over. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we had a drone come fly the project in June. I'm just going to kind of walk through progress and where we're going. This first picture is the south end of the project. You can see the frontage road's complete. We're working the southbound main lanes. The northbound frontage road side, we should start paving hopefully the beginning of August is what we're thinking. So starting down around the 17th, 18th Street area and then working our way north. This is looking to the north from the 11th, 12th Street area. You can see we've completed the majority of the southbound frontage road with the exception of that 5th, 12th Street area. Utilities have been cleared finally in that section. We've got storm drain going in the ground. Working through a few minor conflicts there, but we're still on target for hopefully an August to September timeframe for paving that section and getting it reopened. You can see new 4th, 5th Street bridges at the top of the picture. We've completed the beam setting there. We hope to have that deck poured later in August. In the same stretch, you see where we've started the southbound main lane excavation and embankment work. And then over on the northbound frontage road side, as I mentioned, we're hopeful that in the August timeframe, paving continues up towards 4th, 5th Street. So now this is from 4th, 5th Street, looking back to the south. So just kind of an opposite view of what we just discussed. Again, you can see that one remaining section of the southbound frontage road to be completed. At the top of the picture, that is the new 11th, 12th Street overpass. Again, we hope to have it poured in the August timeframe as well. And then on the left side of your screen, you can see the newly completed and newly opened Dutton Avenue. This next picture is now from 4th, 5th Street looking to the north. You can see the retaining wall work that started for the southbound main lanes. This bridge structure is the University Park structure. I'm sure as many of you are aware, there are now beams on that structure as well. We hope to have that bridge deck poured in August along with 4th, 5th, and 11th, 12th. On the right side of your screen, you can see the little section of northbound frontage road and the right turn lane onto University Parks. That's another section we hope to have paved and opened in August. So hopefully that it helps with the operation of that intersection. Okay, this is, again, between University Parks and the Brazos River, looking back to the south. So just another view, you can really see the retaining wall work that's going on and continues to progress in that area. Now looking to the north over the Brazos. At the bottom of the picture, you can see the column forms up for the southern bent of the Brazos River. Those have been poured since this picture. The contractor has completed the drill shafts at this north span and are starting column work there. It's anticipated that we'll be setting the steel beams on that bridge in early August. And then at the top of the picture, you can see the MLK bridge, which again has progressed quite a bit since these pictures were taken in June. Again, just another close-up of the MLK structure and the earthwork going on with the main lanes. This is looking back to the south, again from the MLK intersection. See the bridge work progressing along with all the dirt work. So now this is from MLK looking to the north. This closest bridge structure is actually our bridge over the railroad tracks, which you can see we're having to cut and pick in sections to work around the train schedule. Again, since this picture was taken, the vast majority of that bridge has now been removed with the two spans on the north end and south end left to come out. You can see to the north where the contractor started actually placing the new pavement for the new southbound main lanes of 35 coming under the 4th Street Bridge. This is from on top of the 4th Street Bridge. At the bottom of the picture, you can see the turnaround structure that was completed with this project. And again, since this picture was taken, the contractor has actually done some dirt work to tie in the new MLK exit ramp. They've actually got bond breaker on the ground and will actually be placing concrete pavement for the new main lanes. Looks like later this week and into next week. And again, this black hot mix section, this is what I was just referencing, that'll be paved this week. And again, it's the new I-35 main lanes through this area. So again, looking to the north, you can see this is what used to be the 77 interchange. So it's changed quite a bit since the start of this project. All that's left is the northbound bridge. You can see the new southbound frontage road coming through. On the right side of the page, this frontage road section has been graded out. There's now hot mix on it, and we'll be paving it in August as well. So this is from roughly the 84 intersection looking back to the south. So another view of what was the 77 interchange. You can see these columns down at the bottom of the page. That is for the new 77 braided ramp exit. This new concrete pavement that's gone down on the frontage road. This next picture will show a better view, but this is looking to the north at 84. On the right side of the page, you can see the new northbound frontage road that has hot mix on the ground and the tie into Bellmead Drive. That'll be paved in August as well, along with this section just north of Bellmead Drive up to 84. So this is from Barron's looking back towards US 84. Again, you can see all the southbound main lane work going on there, the completed southbound frontage road work, along with the northbound frontage road dirt work. And then last picture here, this is the Barron's interchange. The northbound frontage road intersection was actually paved earlier this week. Contractor will be coming back after they pave the main lanes to pave from Barron's up to about the Popeyes restaurant towards 340. Again, you can see the southbound main lane work going on here as well, and retaining wall work has actually started in this area since the picture was taken. With that, that's the last picture I have. So as you can see, a common theme is a lot of concrete pavement coming up along the northbound frontage road and southbound main lanes, along with a lot of bridge work. So I'll open it up to any questions if there are any.
Clayton, thank you so much for the show and tell. Does anybody from the board have questions or comments for Clayton on this project or any of the other projects?
This is Holmes, and just Clayton, thanks for the drone pictures. It really brings it to life. It's hard to tell from ground level the progress that we're making, but it's looking very good and still ahead of schedule as I understand it. So thanks for the presentation.
Sure. Yeah. And our plan is to do this approximately quarterly. So as I get these updates, I'll try to work them into the presentation so you guys can take a look at them. All right, Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, and let's see, Clayton, if you can, thank you. We'll go ahead and switch presentations here and get back down to where we're supposed to be. Okay, so there is no meeting scheduled for August. Our next meeting will be Thursday, September 17th. We are anticipating that all of our remaining policy board meetings through December are probably going to be virtual. Of course, that's dependent on the governor's office continuing their disaster declarations. That is what allows us to meet virtually as opposed to in person. We're anticipating that that's probably going to continue for some time. For that agenda, we do have some proposed designation changes to the National Highway System. And so we'll be going over what the National Highway System is, since that's not something we deal with very frequently. And this is actually the first time there are any proposed changes since it was first adopted back in 1991. And then we also want to start a conversation regarding TxDOT's Vision Zero. Transportation Commission has adopted an official goal of eliminating traffic fatalities by the year 2050. So we want to begin that conversation of what that looks like for our region and an assessment of fatal crashes within our county, and we can go all the way back to 2010 on that. We probably want to update you on where we are with COVID-19 travel impacts. We've been keeping up with that, and there have been some interesting changes since we last covered this last month with you. And then we'll continue our discussion and updates from TxDOT on highway construction within our region. And that is my report.
Chris, thank you very much. We do not have any other items on the agenda. So that being said, we will adjourn at 2:54 p.m. I'd like to thank everyone for their participation, and we will see you next time.
We'll adjourn the Waco City Council as well at 2:54 p.m. Thank you.